we just want to remind everybody to please, and we sent this information out, but please mute your phones and your computer audio. And just so you have a sense of how, if you didn't get a chance to read this, we want to hear from manufacturers who are joining us today. So this entire program is designed to give you a chance to voice your thoughts and ideas on important issues impacting your business and the manufacturing industry. And we're going to use two formats to collect your thoughts.
Mike, it's Anirban. Just before you get going, we have a special guest here today who has a special message. And so I want to give way to that special guest who will make herself known right now.
Hello, Anirban, this is 2 days in a row.
Oh my goodness.
I know, tough times for you, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Galeazzo,
Kelly,
how are you?
What a treat. Oh my goodness. You know
Surprise.
what? I just saw your boss on TV. He's doing a great job, the governor, talking about still standing.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'll let him know. We'll be speaking with him later today, and I'll let him know that you said that. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, thank you.
So, Mike.
Yes.
As you know, manufacturing is so important to the state of Maryland. We even talked about it yesterday at our Maryland Economic Development Commission meeting that I had referenced, speaking with our chair for that commission, Anirban Basu. And we talked about all of the great things that are happening across the manufacturing industry. But one thing is for certain, Mr. Galeazzo, it would not be possible without you.
Thank you.
So I think that there was lots of people that wanted to be able to make sure that you knew how important you were to the Department of Commerce, to the governor, and let me just add, you are our very first, when I was at the Department of Labor, apprenticeship ambassador, and you're still doing that and making sure that that is going to go really, really far. And what everybody has been able to do during the COVID crisis as well, Mike, you have been on top of your game. And not only are you a true professional that has given back to your industry, to the community, to the youth in our state, but you have also been a very good personal friend of mine. And I'm just here today to thank you for that.
I really appreciate that, Kelly. Thank you so much.
And I have a few things here, Mike, for you.
Okay.
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 So I'm gonna read a couple of them. I have a couple of special citations for you, and I have another special visitor in just a second. But let me read this for you. This is from me, the Secretary's citation to Mike Galeazzo. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of the state of Maryland, in celebration of your 30th anniversary with the Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland, in recognition of your hard work in growing this nonprofit association into a successful resource for companies throughout the state, in appreciation for your dedication to Maryland's manufacturing sector over the years, and with our best wishes for continued success in the days and the years to come, we are pleased to confer upon you the Secretary's citation signed by me, your friend, for today. So congratulations, but wait, there's more.
There's more, okay.
This is a big day, Mike Galeazzo. This is for everybody on your call, and this is from the Department of Commerce, Secretary citation to Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of the state of Maryland, in celebration of the 30th anniversary of the Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland, in recognition for your advocacy on behalf of Maryland's manufacturing industry, in appreciation for your dedicated partnership over the years, and with our best wishes for continued success in the days and the years to come, we are pleased to confirm upon RMI the Secretary's citation. So, and just one quick thing. I have a special visitor that also he stopped by his mom's house today, and he didn't even know that he'd get a chance to say hello.
Congratulations.
I was thinking of heading out to Frederick to get a bagel.
There's plenty of bagels out there.
Well, you'll definitely have to come out, and we'll be looking forward to that, Mike.
Congratulations, Mike.
Kelly, thank you. Kelly, I think anyone that's been in a leadership role understands, as you do, it's the people around you. And one of the beautiful things about 30 years of RMI is the beautiful people that I work with. You know, it makes it more than just a passion to help others, but when you're working with people who have the same spirit of hopefulness and the same kind of heart, it makes life worth living. And that's what it's been for me with the faces that I'm looking at right now and many others over 30 years. It's been a joyride, but I have to warn you, we're ready for the next 30 years. And thank you, Kelly, so much.
And so are we, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. Annabelle, what a surprise. Thank you.
Oh, no, it wasn't me. Many other behind the scene put that together. But thank you, Madam Secretary, Secretary Schultz. And you know, he should be honored. He works at this so hard. And he's done so much. And there's so much more to be done. So thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Kelly.
All right, Mike, time for you to go on.
Yeah, let me let me wipe some tears from my eyes here.
Me too.
From my, okay, well, I'm just gonna, you all know the game plan. Use the chat feature. I was doing instructions, okay? The chat feature will allow you to share your point of view. So first of all, we're gonna do a series of polling questions for manufacturers to answer. And we ask that only manufacturers respond to these. We have a lot of non-manufacturers on the phone because they're affiliated with our sponsors. And then for everyone who's a manufacturer, anyone, they can use the chat feature. We're going to be reviewing what you submit, and we'll address some of your chat feature submittals during the program. But with over 100 people, we can't address all of them, but we will address them afterwards. We're going to capture all that information. So it's really important that even if you don't have time to address all of your comments and ideas, that you submit them to us. So again, a special thank you to my good friend Annabelle Basu and Sage Policy Group for partnering with us on the New Directions for Maryland Manufacturing Initiative. This 4-part webinar series is just one of many activities you are going to be associated with this initiative, which is designed to engage Maryland manufacturers in galvanizing stakeholder support of our industry during this critical juncture in Maryland's economy. And we have several companies and organizations who've stepped up as sponsors in support of us bringing this specific webinar to you. And so we are going to ask each one of them, and please keep it to 60 seconds so we can get on with the program, to comment. We're going to give each of the sponsors 60 seconds to comment, and then we're going to get on with the program. So let's start with a major sponsor of our event, the Maryland Department of Commerce, Heather Graham. Heather?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having us on this morning. I think Secretary Schultz may have taken our 60 seconds this morning, but it was well deserved. So I just want to say Maryland Department of Commerce is pleased to be a partner with RMI, not just on this series, but throughout the year on many different activities and events. We are the state's economic development agency for those who don't know us. We're here to support our existing businesses and manufacturers in the state to grow and be successful. We have a number of programs to help do that. You can send us an email or check out our website to learn more. We're here to support you, so please reach out. And I do want to thank our other partners that are on the call today in manufacturing who have helped lead the way during this time of uncertainty for the manufacturing industry and reaching out, creating PPE and other ways that they've supported the state during our pandemic response. And I look forward to the discussion today. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Heather. And in particular, I'm just going to add Mike Kelleher, Maryland MEP, has just done an extraordinary job working with Commerce and helping the manufacturing industry as it relates to the COVID thing. So, Mike, thank you. Okay, PNC Bank, we appreciate your support. Scott Nicholson.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning. Just want to say that we are also very excited about being a part of the series with Anaban and Stacy and Mike. I was actually not sure what I was going to say today. Dave and I have taken some time kind of going back and forth on speaking on behalf of PNC, but Kelly touched on about people and culture, and one thing that PNC has across our whole footprint, but especially in the Baltimore market where we work, is great people. We support our customers, and we're very supportive of manufacturing across our entire footprint. And again, we're thrilled to be a part of this, and appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, thank you, Scott. Jody Bollinger from Frederick.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah,
Hey,
can you hear
Jody,
me?
hi. Good morning.
Hi,
Yeah,
good morning.
yeah.
Well, I just want to say congratulations, Mike. It was well deserved, and we do appreciate everything that you do for us in the manufacturing world. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I also would just want to say, and I echo everybody's, sentiments. But really, I want to say thank you to our manufacturers out there. You've had to do a lot during this COVID time, pivoting the way that you've had to do business. And actually, I just want to say, we really do value what you bring to the state, and the way that you're pivoting is great. So thank you for doing that, and I look forward to a healthy discussion today. And thank you again, Mike and your team, as well as Sage Policy Group, for bringing this together.
Thanks, Jody. And I want to mention, I spent Saturday driving around Frederick, Contocton, and the countryside. And if people are feeling shut in, I suggest you jump in your car and drive through the countryside of Frederick, Maryland. It's beautiful out there.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Ryan Miller. Ryan is a member of RMI, and he's with a group called Critical Functions Risk and Resilience Advisor. Ryan? Oh. Ryan, are you unmuted? Okay. Stacy, would you? I'm not sure what happened. You want to send Ryan? I don't think he's on the call, is he?
I don't know. I will text him right now.
Okay, maybe you text him. All right, well, let's go on. My good friend, Abba Polikoff. Abba, I don't remember how long we've known each other, but it's probably way before I had all this gray hair. So with Gordon Feinblatt, an amazing and great law firm here in Baltimore. So Abba?
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. Although we're not a manufacturer, actually, my wife does have a manufacturing company, but not me. We've been long supporters of Regional Manufacturing Institute, Mike Eliazzo for the great work he's done, and also great friends with and admirers of Anirban Basu. Anirban, we go back a long ways. Mike, you've done a phenomenal job with the RMI organization and network, and all the wonderful companies that are part of it. Anirban, you've worked tirelessly for the Maryland economy, and I really buy into your thesis that manufacturing is vital to the state's economy and well-being. Productive business, not the unproductive type like some of us advisors. We look forward to continuing, Mike and Anirban, to work with you guys to help in any way we can the manufacturers of Maryland and to generate productive growth in our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Abba. Hey, Stacy, I'm going to go ahead and back up and talk about Ryan's, and Mike Kelleher, if you can help with this. I know that Ryan wanted to talk about.
Like he's on.
Is he on? Ryan, where are you, buddy?
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Okay, good.
So,
yeah, let's hear the good news.
I've got a new laptop. When the lid is closed, the microphone shuts off. It's a security feature on MacBooks. I apologize. So I'm Ryan Miller. I'm the principal of Critical Functions. We're an operational risk and resiliency firm that helps protect critical functions from disasters and disruption for manufacturers specifically. I help manufacturing leaders build a strong risk management program so each of you can spend less time worrying about what's around the next corner and more time growing your business. Just a quick heads up, I know you're getting ready to throw the microphone to Mike Kelleher. In September, in partnership with Mike, we're assembling a group of manufacturers that we get to personally walk through the process of building a business continuity plan. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to either Mike and I. So thank you again for this presentation. I can't wait to get started.
And I told Ryan that when he gets the program up, we'll get information out to everybody in our network. And finally, my dear good friend, Scott Phillips from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Minority Business Development Agency, Advanced Manufacturing Center, Baltimore. How do you get that on? Hey, Scott, how do you get all that on your business card?
I know it's a lot. It's a mouthful.
Okay, brother.
Good morning. Good morning, Mike, and congratulations on 30 years. It's exciting to work with you, Stacy, Peter, and the entire RMI team. As you know, we represent minority manufacturers in the region, and we partnered with you since the very beginning, and it's been a benefit to both of us. So I appreciate you. For everyone out there who is not familiar with the MBDA Regional Advanced Manufacturing Center, we work with manufacturers here from New Jersey down to Virginia with a focus on those in Maryland. I want to thank Anabon for this series. This has been really informative, and it's helped us to begin to think about the future. I want to thank all of the members of the MBDA Center. We've had a number of our clients participate, Mike, and I know we have some of them on the line today. And I want to thank the RMI board for working with you to be intentionally inclusive. And with that, I guess we should get on with the program. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Thank you very much. Okay. And again, thank you to all the sponsors and partners for the support of today's program. So let's get started. This 4-part New Directions for Maryland Manufacturing webinar series was designed to help chart a course for the future of Maryland's manufacturing industry. So let me just say, so what is New Directions? Well, simply, it's very simple. Make Maryland manufacturing a priority. We're in a situation today in our state, as others are, where we have declining revenues, increasing unemployment, and manufacturing as a wealth-producing industry can help with both of those problems. We can help generate wealth, and we certainly, because we've had a long history of having job openings, we can make those available to those recently unemployed folks. So the purpose behind New Directions is to draw attention. Now more than ever is the time for us to really speak out to public policymakers to make sure that the future of Maryland's economy includes manufacturing as a critical industry. I see some folks on the phone like Carl Lysay and Mike Keller. We all for years have been promoting, and Scott McDonald promoting the importance of manufacturing, but now there's a reason for saying, folks, it's time to invest in manufacturing because I think our future economy depends on it. So we all know, we know all of you have some pressing issues you're facing right now. So thanks in part to the COVID-19 because of, hold on, I gotta open up my screen here so I can read this. We know all of you have some pressing issues you are facing right now thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're going to start today's program by asking a few polling questions to take the temperature, so to speak, of the manufacturers who are joining us. And again, we only want manufacturers to respond to these polls. As previously mentioned, we ask that we only want manufacturers to respond. After the questions have been posed, I'll ask Anabon to add some remarks before we move into the next part of the program. Now, anytime you have comments, ideas, or questions, please use the chat feature and send those to us. So at this time, Stacy Smith is going to post the taking the temperature polls. And it has more to do with this current situation as it relates to COVID. So Stacy, are we ready?
Yep, the poll is live, and just so you guys know, your answers come in anonymously. So don't worry, we don't know who's answering how.
Right, and hopefully everybody can see these. First question is, how is your business faring right now? Extremely well, fair, not well at all. And what do they do, Stacy? Do they just click
Yes,
on the choice?
just
correct?
click the answer, yep. Yep, and then scroll down to the next question. There's 4
Okay.
questions.
Has there been, then the second one, has there been a significant change in the demand for your product? Yes, no, or somewhat. Are you experiencing challenges in getting workers to come to work? Because we're hearing that in some industries. Yes, no, or somewhat. And are you having trouble filling open positions? Yes, no, or somewhat. And again, this is just to get a quick temperature of what's going on with those of you that are dealing with the COVID.
I'll give it like another 15 seconds or so. I think we.
And then Stacy, when they get done doing the polls, we're going to see the results.
Yes.
Everybody will see it. Okay.
Yep. Let's wait another couple seconds. I see some more answers still coming in here. Okay.
So as we finish, Annabon, we're going to ask you to kind of comment on what these results are telling us. And then we're going to move into another series of polls. Oops.
Can you guys see the results?
Yes, Stacy, we can.
Okay.
So Annabon, do you want to?
Well, let's go through these, Mike. Sure. Yeah. First, with respect to the question of how is your business faring right now, 34% said extremely well.
That's.
And another 63% said fair. So you add those two figures together, it's 97% saying that our business is at least performing fairly decently. That's pretty impressive. And I think a testament to the resilience of Maryland manufacturing and, of course, the upside potential that we have here. Number 2, has there been a significant change in demand for your product? Answer 66% said yes. Unfortunately, I don't know if that means that the demand for the product has gone up or down. Another 16% said no change in demand for product. But the point is that a majority, an easy majority, roughly 2/3, say there has been some change. So COVID-19 has had some impact clearly. 3, are you experiencing challenges in getting workers to come to work? More than a third, 34% say yes, we're having a challenge. Now, it'll be interesting to know based on people's chat responses if that has anything to do with the $600 in federal supplement to state unemployment insurance, which is set to end if it hasn't already ended. And so, so anyway, I know 41% say no and 25% say somewhat in response to that question, which means that a majority, roughly 60%, say that they're having some challenge getting workers to come to work. And finally, are you having trouble filling open positions? This is amazing, Mike, because we have a state unemployment rate of 8%. We have a national unemployment rate of 11.1%. And yet 53% of our respondents, these manufacturers, say, yes, they're having difficulty filling open positions. Now, of course, that might have been true before the pandemic because there have not been enough machinists and welders and so on and so forth. 31%, less than a third, say no to that. And then 16% say somewhat. So about 7 in 10 say they're having noticeable difficulty filling positions when you take it all in. And that's my commentary on that, Mike.
And I think that last question underscores our position that we want to try to match up. I refer to them as the newly unemployed who won't be going back to work because their companies are closed down. There's an opportunity to perhaps attract them to come fill those occupations in manufacturing. But we need to do some work with that. But it says we're on the right track.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
It's Peter. I was just going to ask Stacy, do we have a sense in terms of how many manufacturers are actually responding to the poll?
Looks like 24, 32 of those that are on. I know we have more than that that were registered, but 32
Okay.
manufacturers responded.
That was one of the questions in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter, because I know that, remember, if you got a question or something, we can have, Peter's keeping an eye on that, and we want to make sure that, he'll, as he just did, he'll get on the line and ask the question. Okay, now we're going to do something a little different. We're going to spend more time on a few very specific polling questions. So let's talk about the future of Maryland manufacturing. Get your thoughts on what is most important and what are some of the tools and solutions that to help your business and industry. We have 4 polling questions. We have 4 polling questions to present, but this time we're going to ask each one at a time, and spend about 10 minutes discussing polling questions topics before moving on to the next question. So this time we're going to do a deep dive with each of the questions, the polling questions that we're going to ask. Again, remember, manufacturers only on answering these polling questions, but all of you can call, all of you on the call are welcome to submit your ideas, comments, or questions to the chat area. And again, Peter's going to be paying attention to that. So Peter and Stacy and Annabon, are we ready? I think we are. So here's our first polling question. What education training will be most important for the typical manufacturing worker to have in the future? Okay, the choices are mechanical engineering degree from a 4-year college, software engineering degree from a 4-year college, on-the-job training, apprenticeship, completion, and 2-year degree in manufacturing related program. And again, just to remind you, these last polling questions tend to deal more with the future, like where we're going, to get input from you that can be part of the new directions. Okay. So it looks like mechanical engineering degree, 7%. Software engineering degree, 0. On-the-job training, 37%. Apprenticeship, 19. 2-year degree in manufacturing related program, 37%. Are you surprised, Annabon?
A little bit, because in some sense, I feel like the future is not that different from the present. A majority of jobs these days has a primary skill that is learned on the job. And that seems to be consistent with this. 37% said on-the-job training. If you bring us workers who can pass a drug test, if you bring us workers who are literate, have some basic facility in math, we can train them to do these jobs and make a middle-class living or better. 19% said apprenticeship completion, and then 37% said 2-year degree in manufacturing-related program. Add that up, Mike, that's 93% say that, it's not that we need elaborate formal education here. We need people who are ready to be relevant to the industry, to take on-the-job training or a 2-year degree. And that means that for the future of Maryland manufacturing, people to get into the industry don't have to make huge financial or time commitments. This is a pathway to the middle class that is relatively easy for them to access. And so, it's wonderful. Now, no question is perfect. And one person says the question is too broad. I noticed that Douglas said in the chat room, and this is not anonymous, so I can say that, our struggle with open positions is that there is not a pool of people in important manufacturing and other related positions in this area. That's where we need to be, Mike. We need to create that pool of people if we're going to be the success story we want to be here in Maryland.
And of course, tied in with achieving that is the whole image of manufacturing and perception people have of manufacturing, or the lack of awareness. I mean, this conversation has been going on for years. That's why RMI has always felt that promoting a positive image of manufacturing is critically important so that people understand what manufacturing is about today. What's under the hood of manufacturing and the skills needed.
That's right. And, Scott McDonald points out that writing skills can matter in many contexts. Frank says that it's important for people to have a work ethic. That's absolutely true. The point is, if they have that work ethic, that willingness, there's a pathway here in Maryland to the middle class for everybody. That's what this is saying. And that's a pretty impressive thing to be able to say.
Do we have any other comments on this from anyone? Anyone dying to say something about this? We'll unmute you.
Okay. Mike, I threw a question in there. Do you think that the newly unemployed know where and how to access open manufacturing jobs? To me, that seems like a
well, they wouldn't necessarily. They probably don't, I'm guessing, simply because they've been collecting unemployment, and it's I'm not so sure if the unemployment benefits inspire people to start looking for work. I'm just guessing that right now. But that's, yeah, I mean, just in general, the question is, how does anybody find out about jobs in manufacturing?
I mean,
Does
I think a
anybody want
couple
to
of things.
comment?
Well, a couple of things here, Mike. One is that this was a phenomenon before COVID-19 and
That's
these
right.
relatively generous unemployment insurance benefits, these supplements from the federal government. People have not been looking to manufacturing for their livelihoods for quite some time. I'm quite sure that parents in some instances have dissuaded their children from looking for manufacturing, presuming that it was a smokestack industry in decline. They just do not understand. Now, one of the ways to disseminate information about available job openings in manufacturing or other industries is through these workforce development offices around the state, and we have some good ones. I mean, the one in Harford County, Cecil County is phenomenal in terms of disseminating information, but there are others. And so, so that's one of the things that manufacturers have to do, is work with those offices very carefully so that anyone who is interested can find out quite easily.
Another thing just to add to that, because it's something that RMI is launching this week, you know, we're launching our Champions of Maryland Manufacturing initiative, which basically shows the face not just of manufacturers, but of the manufacturing ecosystem. So anybody that goes to that website and looks at the company's stories that are posted there will get a feel for what manufacturing in Maryland in terms of the broad ecosystem is all about. It's not set up for workforce, but it clearly will show people the stories of different companies that might help. And in every case, they can go to that company's website. But there's work to be done there. There's no question about it. It's not a new issue. That's why RMI teamed up with Maryland Public Broadcasting, okay, to produce a 13-part series on Maryland manufacturing. I mean, if it's on TV, it's real, okay? They're in the process of raising money for that. Of course, like everybody else, COVID did not create a good situation for asking for money right now. But it's still, I think it's still a good idea to show on TV, you know, what Maryland manufacturing looks like under the hood.
Yeah, and I think, Mike, to dovetail on that, one of the comments was, and we know this very well, is that a lot of people just don't know what manufacturing is.
Right.
And another comment that we got was the staffing agency says there's no candidates out there for the positions they're looking for. So that's interesting.
Well, there haven't been in the past. Our unemployment rate just doubled. There's a lot of new people in that pool of the unemployed, and these are people that help. You know, let me just mention this. I'll tell you what an eye-opener is. If you go to the Maryland Department, and I have a list of all the jobs in Maryland manufacturing by title, that's an eye-opener because it's not machinist. You know, it's not just one. We tend to speak about jobs in manufacturing, although it's one or two different occupations. There's a wide range of jobs in manufacturing, particularly depending on the kind of manufacturing it is. And that's something we need to do a better job of explaining. So the person that was the manager of a bar could very well be a manager, I think, with the right training in manufacturing. The one thing with that group that I think that it's worth pursuing is they have a work history. They have a mortgage. They need to find new work in order to sustain their quality of life. So they may be eager once we have an opportunity to help them see what's there.
I think there's another relevant comment here. Harford, Cecil, and Carroll County seem to understand the industry. We got to figure out what their workforce systems are doing that others can emulate.
Okay. Sorry, folks. I'm trying to find my paper.
Although
Okay.
there's another comment, Mike, that one of our candidates is in Carroll County and they can't find people. So transportation seems to be a big issue.
Could be, yeah. I mean, again, I'm suggesting that we take a hard look at who these newly unemployed are and match them up as quickly as possible. I don't think we have a system that can do that well right now. But I do agree with Annabon. There's a lot of great systems out there. And I know that Susquehanna group is really, really on top of things. So I agree with Annabon. Okay, let's go to question number 2, polling question number 2. You ready, Stace? Should local communities, counties within Maryland be allowed to vote on whether or not they adopt right to work status? So this is a right to work question. No vote needed. Entire state should remain non-right to work. Yes, local communities should be allowed to choose. C, other. And one of the things, well, we'll wait till we get to the comment.
Answers are still coming in. Give me a little bit here.
And Annabon covered this topic well in some of the previous webinars. I know he's eager to see what the response are. Okay. And again, just manufacturers.
Can you see the results?
Yeah, we can see the responses, but I don't like them. In the sense that this does not fit my political ideologies. So again, one of the things that happened in the last week, and I'll go through these responses in a second, but Tesla decided to put its new factory in Austin, Texas. Now, it may be coincidental that Texas is right to work. Maybe that has nothing to do with it. It's just an agglomeration of talent there. But what I have noticed in the data, and in fact, as Mike pointed out, I talked about some of this, what I've seen in the data is that communities that attract the largest amounts of new capital investment in manufacturing tend to be in right-to-work states. And sometimes not even in the American South. States like Indiana and Michigan, for instance, have attracted a lot of capital investment, and they're certainly not southern states. So the answer is this. Should local communities, counties within Maryland be allowed to vote on whether or not they adopt right-to-work status? 38% of manufacturers said no vote needed. The entire state should remain right to work, which is a higher figure than I would have anticipated.
Should remain non-right to work.
Yes. Should remain non-right to work. If I didn't say, non-right to work, meaning that we should not become a right to work state. The second response, yes, local communities should be allowed to choose. 28%, so a little bit more than a quarter said yes. And I thought that proportion might be higher because, again, one of the aspects of collective bargaining, one of the goals of a union, not to be anti-union, a lot of Marylanders and other Americans believe that were it not for the unions, their family would never have entered the middle class in this country. So I respect that. But one of the goals, of course, of unions is to raise the returns to labor, to drive up costs in the sense that labor is getting a higher return. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but to be a profit maximizer, one has to be a cost minimizer. And any aspect of the environment that causes costs to go up, it mitigates the effort to try to be a cost minimizer. But nonetheless, the results are what the results are. And then 34% are not sure. About a third are not sure with respect to this. And that's the group I have to work on. So anyway, that's my response to you, Mike.
Do we have any comments?
Yeah, Mike, I think that there might be an educational issue here too, as it relates to right to work. So maybe not everybody fully appreciates what's involved with right to work. So maybe just spend 30 seconds or so defining.
Let Annabon, you want to talk about what that means?
Yeah, it has to do with, whether or not one is required to be part of a union, voting rules, so on and so forth. But generally, what right to work means is not that there will be an absence of unions. There are unions in southern states, but what tends to happen because of different rules, different norms regarding voting to be part of a union or union membership is that the fraction of a workforce that is union tends to be smaller, considerably smaller in right to work states. And again, Michigan in recent years has become a right to work state. Indiana had become a right to work state. And part of the goal of that was to create an environment that was more favorable to manufacturers so they could stay in Michigan and didn't have to move to Texas or South Carolina. But that's it. And it's complicated. It has to do with voting rules and ultimately the outcomes relate to the proportion of the private sector workforce that is unionized or not unionized.
Peter, I saw some questions come
Yeah,
in.
yeah, there was a good one here, and I think it kind of goes back to the earlier comments about the image of manufacturing. So the comment was, if we sell our story better, more people would vote to choose that we don't necessarily need the unions to get good jobs.
You're right. I mean, again, it's not that you're abolishing unions. It's just that some of the rules surrounding membership change. But in any case, there's a lot of talk out there about voter suppression, right? Voter suppression. We want people to be able to allowed to vote. Well, let's have a vote. That my attitude is, look, if Allegheny County wants to be right to work, but Montgomery County doesn't, fine. But at least give people the choice. That's my philosophy. I love choice, the notion of choice. If Dorchester County doesn't want to be right to work, but Wycomico County does, let them choose. But in any case, that's the response.
Can a county become a right to work, or is it something required by the state legislature? Does anybody know, is this a county issue or a state issue to decide? Does anybody know that? I don't know.
I think there'd have to be state legislation to allow for these plebiscites to take place. And then the counties would put those together and have those votes, those referenda. But it can happen, and in other states there are examples of other states in which not the entire state is right to work or not right to work. I mean, it's mixed. So the Maryland could follow that direction as well, that new direction.
Any other comments, Peter?
Yeah, I think a little bit of an earlier comment was that the unions really aren't effective in Maryland, so maybe it's not as big an issue as we think it is.
And it may be, I'm also thinking, Annabon, over the last month and a half, you've presented in your webinars, you've educated us on many of the trends and factors that support manufacturing growth in Maryland, like the reshoring movement. So there are other things that could influence manufacturing growth, reshoring, maybe U.S. Foreign investment in U.S. businesses, the issues with China right now, the high cost over in Asia right now for production. So there's a number of issues in play, I think, that other than right to work, that we could find support for in arguing that we grow Maryland manufacturing.
I understood. There's a lot of positive trends here, don't get me wrong. And Ohio is not a right to work state and attracts a lot of investment. And you know why? They have a can-do workforce. They have a workforce that is experienced in manufacturing, has that history and heritage. And that's really what manufacturers are looking for. And to the extent, and there's a comment here, that the unions may have been effective 40 years ago. It says this is from Handsome, which I think is presumptuous, by the way. But from Handsome to everyone, Anibon's comment was true 40 years ago, but not now. The unions are not effective. But there was a time certainly when unions were very effective in providing training to their members. And if we could return to that kind of model, to the extent that we have divorced ourselves from that kind of model, the unions really could be a meaningful participant in the effort to make Maryland great again in terms of manufacturing.
Yeah, and when you did the one where we were talking about North Carolina, and we were looking at the future. It's not so much what was needed in the past, but the future. Maryland has so much kind of primed already. The fact that we're certainly an R&D state, we're an innovative state with entrepreneurship, state with highly educated people. We have a lot of the ingredients that, if it was packaged correctly, would support what, Annabon, you sometimes refer to as the Maryland manufacturing miracle, which is getting the state to support manufacturing in a way that we can grow faster. So,
we have the Port of Baltimore, we have I-95, we have the best brains in the whole freaking country. So this is a layup for us, I think. We've stood in our own way, but we can get out of our own way and help ourselves. That's what this is about.
Yeah, and also I want to, and I'm looking at Jody, a lot of times when people talk to me about, well, Maryland manufacturing, I point out there are counties where manufacturing is booming, okay? Where like Frederick County, Cecil County doubled the number of manufacturers recently. Now they had a small base to begin with, but the reality is there are clearly spots in Maryland where you're seeing that with right leadership, they're able to attract manufacturers and to grow. So it can be done. I think just figuring out what we need to do to make it happen would be the tact we should be embracing. Okay, we are now looking at polling question number 3. What infrastructure investments are most important to the future of Maryland manufacturing? What infrastructure investments are most important to the future of Maryland manufacturing? Investments at the port, roads and highways, I vote for that, electrical grid, broadband, at or around BWI Airport, or other. And Annabelle, I guess it's fair to say that infrastructure is a key factor in those states where we've seen manufacturing growth. I have to believe that that's.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, actually, the state we talked about was South Carolina at length, and they've made a lot of investments in their port facilities, their inland ports, and obviously in their workforce too. And now they can boast about Boeing and BMW and so on and so forth. So.
Okay, gonna end it and share.
Okay. Everybody's been out driving around on the roads.
Yeah, this is rather remarkable, Mike. This is, so what infrastructure investments are most important to the future of Maryland manufacturing? 3% say investments at the Port of Baltimore, which surprises me, but 41% say roads, highways. Pretty interesting. That's not quite half, that's two-fifths, but interesting because obviously having an efficient supply chain distribution channels matters, and the roads and highways seem to be especially important. 14%, 1 in 7 said electrical grid, and another 1 in 7 said broadband. And there's, arguably some overlap there. So that's sort of interesting. At around BW Airport at 3%. So again, Port of Baltimore, BWI, not major priorities here. And then other 24%. And we'll see if some people give us some sense of what they mean by other in the chat. But pretty interesting. So it's roads and highways. I think the governor would like that because he's been very fixated on roads and highways.
Peter,
so,
did you?
I know we got a bunch of questions. Annabelle, let me comment on one thing. The investment in the port, and we need to hear, it may just simply be, and I always have an issue with this, whenever we report on our exports through the Port of Baltimore, a lot of people don't realize that's not Maryland-made product. That's products made anywhere in the United States that get shipped through the Port of Baltimore. It might be interesting if we had what % of Maryland manufacturers have products that get shipped through the Port of Baltimore. Because I don't, that tells you how they might feel about the value of investments in the port. Just a thought,
No, that's a very good, that's a very good point, Mike, that, at the end of the day, what matters is, what I'm producing and where my customers are. And if I get to my customers or my suppliers get to me by roads and highways, of course, I'm going to favor that kind of investment. It's a very good point. Obviously, what we'd love to have are some manufacturers who are co-located in the state with the Port of Baltimore so that we get those synergies. We're doing the distribution, we're doing the manufacturing, we're creating the middle-class jobs, we're collecting the taxes, we're investing in our quality of life. That's the goal here. Really thicken that supply chain all the way around. But you can see the results don't lie. Roads and highways, 41%. I fashioned this question in the interest of full disclosure, and I should have put railroads on here.
Yeah.
And maybe some of you are thinking about railroads as well, because there's been a lot of talk about the Howard Street Tunnel, for instance, and double stacking for the Port of Baltimore. But in any case, for this question, roads and highways is the big winner.
Another question I saw several times was, what about mass transit? The ability for getting, the employees to the manufacturing facilities in particular.
That's a very good point. Now, our manufacturing tends to be concentrated in places like Cecil County, Carroll County, Caroline County. And I'm skeptical that we're going to get significant mass transit in those kinds of areas anytime soon. But again, it's a very good point.
Any other questions, Peter?
Yeah, so there is some discussion related to outages, electricity outages, and vulnerability is in terms of that kind of supports the electrical grid area.
Right, and we know that the cost of electricity matters, right? Because what is manufacturing? By the way, one of the comments here suggests that we have to change the name of the industry from manufacturing, as it turns out, and maybe people have seen that comment. But manufacturing is what? It is shifting, changing, altering inputs into outputs, and that process of changing inputs into outputs tends to be energy intensive. So if you're a state that has high electricity costs, and Maryland generally is that frustrates manufacturing. It's one of the reasons that Virginia gets a lot of data centers and Maryland gets relatively fewer. But the same kind of economics are at work with manufacturing. So it's another consideration. And again, 1 in 7 folks at electrical grid, presumably with the goal of having more reliable electricity, but also more affordable, competitive electricity as well.
Yeah, and I think on the topic of dependability and reliability, if a plant that's more computerized actually has an outage, it could actually destroy a lot of that equipment. So it's a major issue.
Exactly right.
Is there anyone else? By the way, these are just so people, these are just polling questions for this webinar. These can be refined, and we can at some point do a much larger polling of manufacturers around some of these issues. So we're not taking the responses of these as the final say. This is just to get from those of you on this webinar, your input. So, and we're already enlightening Anibon on some of this, which is good.
Mike, there was another question that was probably a good one. We've talked a lot about mass transit and thinking about the inner city, but the question is, who wants to invest in Baltimore right now?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, that's where the Port of Baltimore is. That's where you've got a lot of potential dense workforce. That's where you've got the, Baltimore City Community College and so on and so forth, Coppin State University, Morgan State University, obviously Johns Hopkins, and so on and so on. So I think Baltimore City is in desperate straits, dire straits. And does anyone disagree? Population is now less than 600,000. 300 homicides a year. In fact, for much of the year, we're in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, one of the things I would have said, Peter, is, oh, thank goodness, a pandemic. Now we can bring the homicide rate down in Baltimore City. Didn't happen. So, deeply problematic. New mayor now, we'll see, what happens going forward. But the dynamics are very bad. And I'm guessing that a lot of those kids who moved into those big city apartment buildings through the previous decade are now ready to move to the suburbs, because they're entering their 30s in large numbers. So, to the extent that Baltimore City has been able to stabilize its population with millennials, that ends this decade. So the city is in very bad trouble. And the other thing is that to the extent that there's more remote work in the economy and we don't use as much office space, well, where's much of the office space in the Baltimore region? It's in downtown Baltimore. And so my guess is the migration to the suburbs commercially and residentially is on, it's been on, and Baltimore City is in really dire straits. And I just don't think people fully, a lot of people, at least in Annapolis, don't fully appreciate how desperate the situation is in Baltimore City and how much of a barrier that is to Maryland's economic success.
So I guess a counter from EAGB, they just issued their second quarterly investment report, and the city's led all 7 jurisdictions investment for both the first and second quarter this year.
And that just speaks to the troubles of Baltimore County. But, set that aside, it is what it is, because the population is declining. The tax base is shrinking. Criminality is elevated. The schools are not functioning as well, though we have a fantastic CEO, in my view, Sonia Santelises, just a fabulous leader of Baltimore City Schools, but still problematic. lot of vacant homes, so on and so forth. And as I say, the demographics no longer work for the city, because the previous decade was about young people moving to the cities. This next decade, I believe, is those young people now moving to the suburbs as they begin to raise families in earnest. But Michelle Welly, I respect, and I love the city very much, and I love the Orioles and the Ravens. I'm pulling for the city, but you know, we're not Denver, we're not Nashville, you know, we're not Austin, we're not Atlanta. We haven't had that rapid growth in tax base that these other cities have enjoyed over the past decade, and so we are vulnerable.
And I know we have, I can't see everybody's on the call, but I know I see a couple of companies, Phil Tolkoff and Scott McDonald, who are located in the city. Do you guys want to make any comments as it relates to Baltimore City?
This is Phil. We just invested in a new facility in Cincinnati instead of expanding in Baltimore City because of the cost. I mean, the cost of construction, cost of real estate tax, employee costs. It was much cheaper to expand in Cincinnati. We got a bid to put 15,000 square feet on our building here in Baltimore City, and it was almost the same amount that I paid for a 9-acre, 63,000 square foot facility in Cincinnati.
Scott or Carl? Carl, Scott, Maryland Thermoform?
Yeah, sure, Mike. Yeah, I don't know if we would, and I think I sent this in the chat. I don't know if we'd locate to Baltimore City again if it was 1997 again. In 97, we wanted to come down and give people a chance who weren't typically given an opportunity. But I saw personally value there. But given the same decision today, I'd probably go to South York or Lancaster County. I'd have the opportunity to work out of York and out of Baltimore at the same time, and draw from both those resource centers. It looks like to be outside the city is better, so you can draw off the resources and not pay the penalty. I was confronted by a junkie in my own parking lot last fall. I had to pick up a shovel to defend me and my son. I didn't appreciate that. You know, it's just too much.
And Mike, I'd like to contribute. The work in Baltimore City has eroded over the last 5 to 10 years. We have openings now to hire people, and we can only get about 50% of the people scheduled for interviews to actually show up for the interview. And then once we've hired them, there's another 50% that never show up the first day of work, and half of those that do don't stay for a full week. And that's not because of the compensation, because we are paying a competitive wage and we offer a superior benefits package. It's because there's an air of entitlement that we can't combat. And then when you keep increasing, when you're legislating the minimum wage, you're increasing the cost without adding any value. And that's directly in opposition of free enterprise.
Thanks, Carl, for that input. You know, Ken Sanchez the other day, who's located in Baltimore County, mentioned to me that trucking rates have gone up, in part because of Baltimore City. I'm not sure I don't know if that's the case, but that's increased his trucking rates. Have you guys in the city found that transportation rates have gotten expensive, or the trucking rates?
That's correct. They're increasing substantially. As a matter of fact, it's a danger factor. People are afraid to come down into the city. Workers are afraid to come to work in the city.
I can jump in here, Mike. I've actually seen private police follow the UPS or the Federal Express truck into our parking lot. And I personally confronted them one time thinking they were being followed, but they were being followed intentionally. People protect the truckers. That's crazy. There's a cost with that.
And I know from more than one instance talking with Drew Greenblatt, who's located down in Baltimore City, that he's had key issues. Yeah, and Annabelle, you talked about this a little bit. Baltimore City is not their problem. I'm going to say this: Baltimore City is our problem as citizens of Maryland, and by that, we have an industry that can change the dynamics of people's lives. We just never had anyone become architects of a future that allowed folks to find that pathway from poverty to prosperity. I'm hopeful that as we start thinking about what do we do in the future, that people in Baltimore City, leaders, one, begin to understand the significance of manufacturing and rehabilitating the city in terms of creating the dignity of work. Now, my friend Scott Phillips, he knows my position on this because we work together and trying to get across the point that, you know, manufacturing is that pathway. So for those of you that are kind of dealing with the reality right now, I'm not trying to change your mind because, yeah, it's painful, but the system needs to come up with a much different kind of vision that helps an ever-increasing number of people to find the dignity of work so that we can get at some of these social problems that are causing our industry significant problems in Baltimore City. And by the way, I don't think it's going to be limited to Baltimore City. I think it can spread. So that's my own personal philosophy. With New Directions, I'm encouraging people, don't think of what we did in the past, because I really believe that we're never going to go back to work. We're going to go forward to work. And what that ultimately means is we have new directions for a new reality, folks. It's just not going to work the way it used to. And together we'll come up with some creative solutions. I think the time is right for creative solutions. I just hope the leadership of Baltimore City embraces the concept that manufacturing is critical to their economy if they provided the right types of systems to protect people, to lower cost, and to make it so that people are saying, I want to stay in Baltimore City, not I want to leave Baltimore City. But the reality is, I think, Scott, you articulated it very well. The reality is it's not a great place right now for manufacturers. Anybody comment on that? Or okay, is this the next poll, Stacy?
That's my my hint to move on to
Stacy
the
telling
next
me
question.
quit evangelizing. What are the key tax or regulatory? Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention Abba Polikoff, who's on the phone. He headed up Governor Hogan's Regulatory Reform Commission. So we have so what are the key tax or regulatory reforms that are needed to support manufacturing in Maryland?
This is our last polling question.
Yeah, lower Maryland's corporate tax rate, lower state and local income taxes. Maryland Department of the Environment must be friendlier to industry. Bulk up industrial zoning. I'm not sure what that means, and other.
Mike, what that means is the notion is that we don't have enough industrially zoned land so that people can build facilities or expand facilities here in the Free State. That's the notion.
Okay. More industrial zoning.
It's about land use.
So again, key tax and regulatory reforms that are needed: lower Maryland's corporate tax rate, lower state and local income taxes. Maryland Department of Environment must be friendlier. Bulk up industrial zoning or other. Here we go.
Wow, Mike, this one I like. This one I like a lot. Thank you so much out there for these responses, because here 36%, more than a third, said lower Maryland's corporate tax rate, and 40% say lower state and local income taxes. So that means that more than 3/4 of our respondents, our manufacturing respondents, said that taxes are an issue. The taxes make us or render us less competitive. Only 4% indicated that Maryland Department of the Environment must be friendlier to industry. Only 4% said bulk up industrial zoning. 16% said other, but clearly the tax part of this has hit on the mark, right? We've hit upon something with those responses. So anyway, that's very interesting. We need to have a tax structure that's more competitive here in Maryland. By the way, not to, I know Stacy wanted us to move away from Baltimore City. I mean, in terms of discussion, but Baltimore City, of course, has the highest property tax rates in the state. And that's part of the story. That doesn't help either. And that's, sort of consistent with what you're seeing. We need a great leader in Baltimore City who begins to chip away at that property tax rate while really hitting on, crime and so on and so forth. There are a lot of beautiful people in Baltimore City who work very hard. They work in leisure and hospitality, they work in retail, they work in healthcare, and some of them don't make a lot of money. Manufacture is a pathway for that group into the middle class if they so want it, but it's difficult for us to grow manufacturing there right now. And Mike has left the building. I don't know why that is.
So, good question from our audience. How about a manufacturing investment tax credit based on investments in new equipment and infrastructure and creating new jobs?
Yeah, that's fine, Peter. I mean, I think that's a great, that comes from Craig, as it turns out, a great suggestion. I would say this, though, that one of the things that we have done is we have excessively complicated our state's tax code. Because our taxes are high, we've created all these loopholes or these cutouts for various players, and so we have this really elaborate tax code that's difficult to understand. If we could make the base rates more competitive, we have a corporate tax rate that's 8.25%. Why? Virginia's is 6%, and my guess is that we would actually collect more in corporate taxes in the state with a lower tax rate. But there's so much tax avoidance taking place, right? Why would I pay Maryland's, why would I associate or assign income to Maryland with its 8.25% tax rate if I, as an accountant, can assign it someplace else? And then the state of Maryland can try to prove that I did that. So I like the notion of simplicity here. We should simplify. And that means, I think, to a certain extent at least, lowering the base rates and making them competitive.
So here's, one of the polls that was not as popular in terms of the response related to regulatory agencies. Fire marshals issues, any building in Maryland is slow and onerous and frustrating.
Right, and that often, one of the things we have a tendency to do, Peter, here, is we have a tendency to assign blame to the extent that we don't get great outcomes to the state of Maryland. But a lot of these issues are the function of local government, local permitting offices, fire marshals, so on and so forth. And often that's not a statewide issue, that's a local issue. And so, we just have to make the state friendlier for business. I mean, that's why I chair the Maryland Economic Development Commission. We want a state that's friendlier to business, because business pays all the bills. When you do the analysis, who pays all the bills for society? It's business. You'll say, no, government pays bills. Well, where do they get the money from? Well, taxes. Who pays the taxes? Well, people do. And who do they work for? Businesses. It all comes down to business. So, this is one thing that can unite us. When business does better, the public sector generates more revenue, and they can spend that revenue as they see fit. So why, if I'm a big spender in Annapolis or in Towson or in Ellicott City or wherever, I want business to prosper. And yet many of these same people who are in these elected positions make life very difficult for business operators. And I don't understand why. It actually defeats their own interests.
So Anirban, this is my own question back to you specifically on that. If you know something in terms of the background of most of the newly elected officials that are in Annapolis, they tend not to come from the business sector, right? So they don't understand business. So you really need and whether or not they're even open to understanding, you need a business 101 education for each one of those legislators so they understand the impact of the decisions that they're making that is detrimental towards the state.
That's exactly right. And somebody pointed out, by the way, that this is the office of the Maryland State Fire Marshal. So that is a state function. My understanding, however, is that different people are assigned to different areas of the state, and that's where the issue comes in. But I thank you for that clarification. That's a very useful one.
So Anirban, this is this is a point where I have a slightly different perspective. So I'd like to share. I think the business of business is people, and I really believe that there have been decades of other people going down to Annapolis and trying to say to legislators, you need to support business because we're good for people. It's failed fundamentally. It doesn't work. All right. I remember years ago, Gene Berner, I think said to me, I was asking him a question about something, and he said, Mike, they just don't care. And that stuck with me. So I think the strategy of trying to convert legislators who are really concerned about other issues in their community, like poverty, and that saying business is what they need, because we've been doing that. The strategy might be, you have a problem in your district that's near and dear to your heart that we can help change. So the focus should be not on the goodness of business for society. They've heard that. They've heard that for years, okay? We have a Maryland Business for Responsive Government. They do scorecards and all that stuff. They've heard it. We need to go down there with a different message that says, you've got problems in your community. We have a solution, and it's called manufacturing. So that's my 2 cents, and saying new direction should be focusing on the business of people and helping people, because the legislators, this, if anybody's been down to Annapolis lately, the legislators that control Annapolis are people, not pro-business people. And I'm not saying there are lots of pro-business legislators down there. I'm talking about who has the power. Who has the power? Bill Ferguson, Adrian Jones. They're going to decide what the priorities are going to be in Annapolis.
That's right, Mike. That's right. And so this is about the voice of business being heard in Annapolis, but as I say, also in Towson, and on Holiday Street in Baltimore, and in Ellicott City, and all the other county seats around the state. The voice of business has got to be heard. And again, this should unite us.
But it's not about, I'm saying what business does for people. Like when you walk inside Maryland Thermoform, what do those employees look like? Where are they coming from? How has their lives changed because Scott McDonald started? That's what I'm talking about. Not Scott or Carl going down there complaining about taxes. They don't care. I'm sorry. But they might care about the faces in manufacturing and how that's changed their lives. That's my perspective on it. We've tried the business is good for society, or business is good. Why don't they understand it? They don't want to. It's just been tried. I say we got to, maybe you do both. You help them understand the revenue that we generate. But I'm just concerned that we've got a group of leaders down there now that are going to respond more to the social than to the pro-business side.
Socioeconomic impact, Mike. I think we really have to show what the socioeconomic impact is of our industry on the communities that we live, we work, and we play in. And I know that's a little outside of how we view the role of a manufacturer as a corporate entity, right? We've got responsibility to shareholders, to owners, et cetera. But if we can't figure out how we impact the community in which our businesses reside, then we're not going to get the support nor the interest, as you've suggested, of the politicians that are in power today. You're just absolutely correct. It is kind of what it is. One of the things that I strongly believe is you got to assess the environment and figure out how to work within it. And our political environment is important. The more we can show that we can employ more people and change people's way of life, the more the politicians that are in power today are going to support all of us that are on the phone, right? Because all of us have the same mission, which is to grow manufacturing, to grow our individual businesses, and to actually have some kind of profitable return for those who are invested in us.
If I can, Scott, if I can piggyback on that, today is the day that we're actually opening up, and we've had opened up our Champions Initiative. Two of the key categories that we're focusing on is giving back to the community and inclusiveness. To the degree that our manufacturers are telling those stories, those are the stories that we're going to be putting out on social media, putting out on YouTube, and we're basically working the policymakers so that they understand what's actually happening. They don't know. They've made their judgments already in terms of what manufacturing is. We need to educate them. It goes back to a lot of other points that were made before. There are so many good things that manufacturers do that we're not telling the story of. And it's critical if we're going to want to make a difference here. And Mike, your points are very, very well taken in terms of a different approach, because the approach of saying lower taxes, lower business, because we're good for the society, you're probably 100% right, particularly with this climate that we have in Annapolis. So you do need to kind of come in with a different approach so they have a full appreciation and want to be vested in our industry and want to be vested in those communities that are doing great things. So if we've got 10 manufacturers that are in a county that are showing what they're doing in terms of inclusiveness, and they're leaders and they're giving back to the community, if you're a delegate, who wouldn't want to be part of that, right? Who wouldn't want to say, hey, those are my companies?
Peter, that's excellent. That's exactly a great example of what I was trying to get at. I've learned over the years that leadership is about a sense of direction and a structure for implementation and enthusiasm. I think New Directions, Anibon, and I appreciate, we've worked together to create a new sense of direction. Manufacturing is important. We're doing that right now with the people in here. But the structure piece is found in our champions. Our champions of Maryland manufacturing, which some of you may not be familiar with, will, as Peter just so eloquently explained, show what we do for communities. It shows the goodness of the manufacturing ecosystem. That's our structure right now for implementing a positive image of manufacturing. And the enthusiasm that's so desperately needed for any cause will be reinforced by that champions. The champions tells the story of a new direction for new reality. So I'm hopeful that these two together, we're going to help make that case. And you're right, every elected official down there, think about this. I think very few elected officials in Annapolis have ever had to deal with the kind of declining revenues that we have, at the same time, the kind of doubling of unemployment. So they're going to be struggling for solutions. And that's why I say now more than ever, we need to get to them and say it's manufacturing. When I went down to Annapolis last year, 2 years ago, I met with a lot of the new Montgomery County folks. And a lot of people may know this, Montgomery County employs more people in manufacturing than any other county. Think about that, right? Most people don't even know that. Even the elected officials didn't know that. So part of what we're doing is just helping them understand what is. But Peter, thank you. You really just, you nailed it in explaining that.
Yeah, and Katie and Stacy just let us know that the time's up for polling discussions.
Okay. So do we want to give...
Mike, but there was one point that I did want to make, just kind of piggybacking on the earlier point. Everybody that's on this call should be submitting a story in terms of what they're doing to help the manufacturing industry. And there's some really great categories there as it relates to COVID, as it relates to giving back to the communities. Everybody that's on this call is part of our greater manufacturing ecosystem. And again, it's not just about manufacturers talking about, what they're doing. It's really all the different companies and organizations and individuals that are supporting the manufacturing base. And that really increases our numbers and really, I think, makes a much bigger impact in terms of what we're trying to achieve in changing the way people perceive the value of manufacturing and what manufacturing is and what it's doing for the communities.
And Stacy, I hate to, is there any chance you could pull up the website so the folks can see what Peter's talking about while I'm talking? We could just show them the directory real quick.
Sure, hang on.
Also, while she's doing that, let me just kind of open this up. Did anybody have any comments or that they would like to make? We got 10 more minutes. So I just want to make sure if anybody's got a burning question or something that we can bring it up.
Well, I just want to say one thing, Mike, that Thomas has in the chat, the concept of this triple bottom line, which gets to the contributions a company makes socially, economically, and environmentally. And I agree with the points that you and Peter have been making that, manufacturers can't go to county executives or legislators in Annapolis and just complain about taxes or whatever. There's an opportunity here to tell a very beautiful story about social contribution, environmental contribution, and economic contribution. And that's where we have to head. That's enough.
So Stacy just brought up, if we could get right to the directory itself, so that people can see what Peter's talking about. If you didn't scroll down.
Maybe show the Acadia one.
Yeah, well, let's just let them see. Yeah, see, I want them to see the whole thing first, okay? Each one of these is a story that's been presented, that's been added to the Champions of Maryland Manufacturing website. There's no cost to putting a story up. There are conditions which are all on our website. So these were we haven't quite launched it. This is the week we're launching it. But this gives you an idea that there's going to be stories in a variety of areas. So go ahead now, Stacy, and show what happens. Oh, Peter wants you to click on one. And so what this is if you submit a story, and in this case, the category was diversity and inclusion. So Acadia, you have 500 words or less. You get to tell your exemplary story. These are supposed to be examples of what works. These are supposed to be not business as usual, but this is something that we did in 2019 and 2020 that we want people to know about because people can learn from this. So you have the story on the right-hand side. You can post a video. And then on the right-hand side, you can put up to 2 or 3 photographs. In this case, they put 4 of your story. Again, this is your opportunity to tell your story. We anticipate getting up to 300 stories. By the way, you don't have to be a manufacturer to be a champion. We've always allowed our champions to include everybody that was part of the ecosystem. So an example might be, thank you, Baltimore Museum of Industry. All right, they're a champion under community engagement. And this has to do with their outreach efforts to help kids during the COVID thing.
So I think the important point here is that this is on the RMI website, but we're also going to be promoting this through social media. And we've got 12 other major partners that are affiliated with manufacturing that are actually going to be pushing this out through their networks as well. So this is going to be a summer-long campaign that will end on Manufacturing Day when we invite students and schools to basically learn about what manufacturing is doing. And then we're going to open this up for the People's Choice Awards, where the top 3 will be voted on in each one of the categories that we have. And as you can see, fighting COVID-19, digital transformation, workforce, community engagement, energy efficiency, diversity and inclusion, those are the categories where we're inviting people to write their stories. This allows us to basically reach stakeholders, policymakers in a different way than manufacturers typically reach them. And hopefully, and it's not just the policymakers, it's the educators, it's the parents, it's the students, it's prospective workers. It's getting people interested in what really is manufacturing and telling the good stories about all the exciting work that you're doing.
And as you can see, there's a variety of ways that you can filter these stories, including by county. So we've already met, we're going to get all the economic development groups for the various counties to get stories in there. So by December, we should have over 300 stories in the system. The deadline is going to be Manufacturing Day. We have 13 partners working with us to make this happen. That's what you see on the right-hand, excuse me, that's not the, those are sponsors on the right-hand side. So anyway, Peter, thanks for bringing this up because I think it's really, really important, again, that this is part of the structure for getting people informed that we can then use, hopefully, to stir up support in Annapolis for Maryland manufacturing. So as we wind up, does anybody have, I guess, any other comments or anything
Mike?
as relates to this?
Mike?
Sue? Susie?
It's me. It's interesting to hear the whole conversation actually over the course of the past hour and a half. You know, there were a couple of things that everyone said that were common. It was interesting. One is this commonality of revenue generation at the very end, the importance of revenue generation for the state and for societal gain. You know, part of the legislature hates this thing about individual gain versus societal gain and community impact. It's you know, it's sort of like nails on a chalkboard sometimes with individual gain. But with regard to, so I think that there are commonalities certainly, in how it can create a better, revenue. States are going to be looking for revenue generation. Obviously, they're all in rough shape after, in COVID, and manufacturing is certainly a great way to be able to improve revenues. What was interesting to me in listening in the call over the past hour and a half is that there are the hows are different. In this, in businesses, we look at market segmentation and then try to address what that means in segmentation. But here a little bit, there's so many, there are many issues that definitely have to do with the type of business, what businesses need, and then there's some common threads overarching in terms of, a business-friendly environment and what that means, employee-friendly environment, what that means, and these conditions for success. But some of these hows are just very, very different. So I guess the question that I would pose to the folks on the phone is, we have this overarching thing of manufacturing, and some are need workers at a certain level to be able to do more manual jobs, and where the competitive picture is at one stage, and some need workers at a different level, again, throughout the process or processes. And so I guess my question is, some are rural and some are urban. Some have supply chains that come from overseas, some have supply chains that are local. And so in this, I guess we're missing kind of this a deeper dive in terms of the hows, because of this lack of segmentation here about what we want to do versus the overall message. So it's a great time for the overall message, first of all, again, especially when you're looking at revenue generation and impact. But the hows, I think, are clearly missing in terms of what we do and how we do it based upon some market segmentation. And I think we'd be really well served by taking a little bit of a deeper dive. And Anubhav, can I give you a challenge to consider that?
Well,
because, you do a wonderful job facilitating. And gosh, it would be, quite wonderful if we could align with Economic Development Commission to create some strategies around what you heard on the phone.
I will take up that challenge, Susan. Thank you so much.
So let me explain something. You're right, perfectly, but we're not at the how point. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's where we're at the point where we just want to keep it the broadest sense, get people realizing that there's this movement to get to the ask or to get to the how.
Sure.
But we're not sitting around saying this is what you need to do. We're sitting around saying there's a vision that now more than ever is the time to stand up, say manufacturing is important, but the what or the how is still to be developed. And that's why input from this group and others will help us get there.
Absolutely. That imperative is just wonderful.
But it's coming from the private sector too, more so than government.
Right.
Excuse me for,
No, right on. So understand the imperative, the timing, we heard it on the phone with everyone. So thank you. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Anubhav. So.
Yeah, though I will say, Mike, I would like us to get to the how and the what sooner rather than later. I want us to act as quickly as possible. We've waited too long. We have a lot of momentum right now. We've got a lot of stakeholders on this call and throughout the state. There is a need for a larger middle class, has been for a long time. There's a need to chip away at this very high unemployment rate. There's a need to alleviate poverty. There's a need to bring more opportunity to Baltimore City, but also the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland and Southern Maryland and so on and so forth. And so we need to keep moving aggressively forward here, Mike.
I don't disagree with that, but I think we agreed that the webinars were kind of meant to get people thinking that there's a possibility. I mean, even our own industry didn't believe we're that valuable. I hate to say it. So this was kind of like cheerleading, getting us to the point. But the how is a very, very challenging, but it's necessary. And that's what we probably want to take into Annapolis as well, is the how. So Sue, we definitely agree with you. That's the next step. The champions thing, by the way, I mentioned it was just to show that it's part of that issue of trying to let people know what manufacturing is. But if there's an agenda that says, we need this, we want this, bum, 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 we still need to develop that. Any other questions? Scott, thank you earlier for your contribution too. I appreciate it. Well, listen, I want to thank. Yeah, it's 10:30. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Kelly Schultz and to Governor Hogan for recognizing RMI and the work that all of you have been doing with us over the years. Really appreciate it. And listen, write your story up, get it on our Champions website, and we'll be back with you in the future, I guess, to get more input on how. Right, Anaban? On the how.
That's exactly
and the
right.
as.
On what, how, when, and really put a plan into action. So we've talked about planning to plan. Now it's time to really get into it and make some change in Maryland and be the state that we can be.
Yeah. Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much, Stacy. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, my team, and see you all later. Take care. Bye.
You will.